Okay, so we're going to wrap up the right triangle trig unit pretty soon. So right now you should be comfortable with solving right triangles, which means if you have a right triangle and you're given some information like two sides or an angle and one side, you should be able to find the lengths of all the other sides and the measures of all the other angles. So now what we'd like to do is let's transition into some application problems. So I have one problem for you today, and then I'll give you a quick review of how we've handled these, and then I'll go ahead and let you work on the worksheet. So here's our opener. Bugs Bunny was 42 meters below ground, digging his way towards Albuquerque. Now why he's going to Albuquerque, I have no idea. But he realized he wanted to be above ground, so he turned and he dug through the dirt diagonally for 100 meters until he was above ground. Now you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with all the right triangle trig we've been doing? So the first thing you need to do, if there's not a picture, is draw a picture. Fortunately, we have a picture. So the dot there is Bugs Bunny. He was going underneath ground, and then he decided to turn. So let's label some things. We know that this is 42 meters. That was given to us in the problem. Let's put our units. And so that makes a right angle. And we know that he turned and dug 100 meters till he got up to the ground. So we know two sides of the right triangle. Now we want to know what's the angle of elevation. This is the angle of elevation when they talk about these types of word problems. So it's that angle right there in the triangle. So we don't have to find the third side of the triangle. We don't have to find the other acute angle. We're just finding this one angle here, which is called the angle of elevation. And we want to make sure we're in degrees, and it says rounded to the nearest tenth. So this is no different than if you opened up the notes and you saw this as a problem. Find the missing angle. It's the exact same problem. So when you see these different word problems, just translate it into, oh, I just have a right triangle and they gave me some of the information. Okay, so like we've done with all our right triangle problems, first thing we're going to do is label our sides. So for that angle, this is the hypotenuse. This is the opposite side. And then we don't need the adjacent side. So which trig function uses opposite leg and hypotenuse? And remember, it's always a good idea to have this somewhere on your paper. SOHCAHTOA. And so if you remember, the sine used opposite and hypotenuse. So we're going to write a sine equation. So the sine of the angle, I don't know, let's call it angle A. Why not? The sine of angle A is equal to the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. Okay, so this is one of those problems where we don't know the angle, so we have to get rid of the sine. We have to undo the sine. So if you remember from last time, we're going to take the inverse sine of 42 over 100, and now we're going to need our calculator. So we're going to get an approximate answer for our angle. So I grab the calculator, slide it over here, make sure I'm in degree mode, check, and I'm going to press second sine. This will return the angle, so I want the angle whose sine is equal to 42 over 100. And there we go. And this said round to the nearest tenth, so we have 24.8 degrees. 24.8 degrees, and that's it. So it's really no different than the problems we've been doing, except now we're tying it to an application. So as a reminder, the three types of problems we can get. Let's say we have a right triangle, and we know, I don't know, we know this side, and we know this angle is 32 degrees, and we want to find this side. So in that case, we have the hypotenuse, we have the adjacent leg, and so we wind up using the cosine, and so we would say cosine of 32 is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And these are the easiest to solve because all we have to do is multiply that denominator to the other side, grab the calculator, punch this in and get our answer. Sometimes though, we have, let's say we know this side is 6, we don't know this side, and this angle is 47 degrees. So we have the opposite leg, we have the hypotenuse, and this time we're going to use sine. So we're going to say, we're going to say the sine of 47 degrees equals 6 over x. So notice in this equation, the x is in the denominator. In the other equation, x was in the numerator. And in the opener, x, or a, was the angle, so we didn't know the angle. So there's 3 different positions of where we don't know. So it's either we have to figure out the angle, we have to figure out the numerator, or we have to figure out the denominator. So we've already talked about in the opener how to deal with when you don't know the angle. You use the inverse function. I just showed you where you don't know the numerator. You just multiply the denominator to the other side. And now in this case, this was the more complicated one. And I won't go through all the mathematics again. I did that in 1 or 2 lessons ago. So essentially, the x can move to the other side and switch the places with our trig function. And so we'll just punch in 6 divided by sine of 47, and then we'll have our answer for x. Okay, so now I have a worksheet in there. It's called Worksheet 7. This one says 11. It's supposed to be Worksheet 7. Might as well cross this out. Worksheet 7. And you'll see there's several problems in there, and they give you a hint. It says draw a picture, label the parts, set up the trig equation, and solve. So we have pictures for the first 2, and I added that one for the second one. You don't have a picture for the third one, so you need to draw a picture. You don't have to be an artist. We have a house. I got an A in art. And we had a ladder leaning against the house. And then, I don't know, we have green for grass in the ground. That's terrible. You see how bad it is? That's okay. So, but we have a right triangle here. And the ladder is leaning against the house. It makes an angle of 30 degrees with the ground. So this angle in here is 30 degrees. And the foot of the ladder is 7 feet from the house. So this side here along the bottom is 7. And they want to know how long is the ladder. So there's your x. So you've got your right triangle, you know one of the sides, and you know the angle, and so you have to solve. Now, on the back side, there's 2 problems. These take a little more work. I want you just to give it your best shot. Even if you're not quite sure, just do something so I can see that you've tried it and made an effort for it. Then go ahead and submit it into the Schoology assignment. And that's all we have. Thanks.